I record locally, I get a better image. All right, I think ready to get going here. A few more people coming in. Another half minute here. Almost have a screen full.
Excuse me if I have to get up. People are continuing to come into this room.
I want to come into the room you reserved, right?
Yes.
Well, you know, we've sent some guards over to help you.
They don't want to miss out.
Well, our assessor thought the Board of Review was meeting in this room and she never bothered to reserve it. So,
no, but she's new. She should be in on some of these meetings, by the way.
Oh.
She needs to know about this.
Well,
It affects
I always I give a Gelman report to the board meetings, to the board.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but it's nothing like being here.
Well.
All right, I'm going to share my screen here and get going. Since I got a new C drive, my screen sharing is a little different. So I have to, let's see, how do I do this? Let's do it over here. It looks good. All right. I need like 4 hands and 2 heads. So I'm Roger Rayle, chair of CARD and chair of Sawyer Residents for Safe Water. In my 31st year watching over this Gelman 1,4-dioxane contamination as a citizen volunteer. So these meetings are recorded. It's a quarterly meeting, so we're going to have extra participation from EGLE and state people. These are recorded and they will be posted to YouTube. So if you don't want something to be made public, then don't say it, or in a rare occasion we can go and edit something out later. So welcome everyone. Got a big crowd today. If you're a first timer here, make sure that Beth has your email address so we can keep track of you for voting purposes as an official CARD member by attending a meeting. And introduce yourself if you are going to make comments, if you're not known to most of us. So I'll turn it over to Beth for approval of last month's minutes.
Thank you, Roger. And yes, anybody could private message me if you aren't on the email list, and I will get you on there. Or you can email me at any other time. I'm on the website, the county website under CARD. And do I have a motion to approve the February minutes from last month?
So moved.
Great. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? No? Okay, the minutes are approved. Thank you.
Thank you, Beth.
Thank you, Beth.
Now we'll turn it over to our executive director, Jack Eaton, to run the meeting. I'll weigh in at the end during my CARD chair comments.
Thank you, Roger. Good morning, everybody. We may end up moving some things around on the agenda as we proceed through it because some of our participants have other obligations today, but last month we finished up pretty quickly, and so that shouldn't be a problem. First up on the agenda is the EPA update. Is there anyone here from the EPA? I didn't notice. Seeing no one, I did see our friend from Debbie Dingell's office, Georgia.
Yes, hi everyone. Hope you are all doing well today. The only thing that I wanted to make a verbal reminder of is that the Congresswoman submitted a comment to EGLE, read the NPDES permit. We also sent it over to the governor's team for her awareness as well. And in general, that follows a type of letter that we like to submit when we know that local stakeholders are submitting some kind of public comment, and we want to, throw some additional weight behind that. So we used a lot of language that would lend to the comments that the rest of the municipalities and organizations submitted, to reinforce those comments and to also express concern that the permit does not progress anything forward, and caution against backtracking on some of what is allowable discharge, some of the other clauses that we had some concerns with. So we did submit that. And I think that it is linked on the agenda too, where I think Beth would have included the comments from other stakeholders for that permit. You can see the comment that we submitted as well. If you have questions about that, then please feel free to reach out. But again, it was designed to, again, reinforce the concerns that others raised. I did see quite a few of those letters from folks before they were submitted to the state, but also to express our own concerns about actually making some progress here. So just wanted to give that reminder because I did email that out, and that is about it on our end.
Thank you. And make sure to convey our appreciation to the Congresswoman for us. I don't think Dan Bicknell is here today.
Nope.
So if there are no comments about the US EPA at this point, I'll move on to EGLE.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having us here today. Good to be with you. I want to just take a brief moment. There is nobody here from the EPA, but we have been in communication with them. They've let us know that this Friday, they are proposing the Gelman site to the national priorities list. So this is the proposal. This is not actually listing. I just wanted to make it clear that, it's not like it'll be a Superfund site tomorrow or Friday, I guess, as it were. So there will be at least 60-day comment period. And then the EPA told me that they're hoping to actually list it either this fall or the next spring, depending on, how that comment period goes. I don't want to say too much more for them. I'm sure they'll be making their statement. They did inform me that the website should be live this afternoon. So there will be more information forthcoming later today. And then, from EGLE's standpoint, so we do support this step in the EPA's progress to adding the Gelman site to the Superfund national priorities list. The transition to federal oversight is sort of the most viable alternative for addressing the issues with the Gelman site. Getting to this point was a significant accomplishment, and it's the direct result of interagency cooperation and collaboration to address those community concerns. So EGLE has been working with the EPA to get us to this point, and we're happy to cooperate with anything that they request from us in the future, with the transition. Vince, I see you got a hand up. Do you have a question?
Yeah, thanks for coming today. I appreciate it and the Eagles'
Sure.
efforts. I know this is a recurring question, but any idea what time frame we'd be looking at for EPA takeover and Superfund effort on this site?
This is one of those big it depends questions. So the length of that comment period and what kind of comments do arise, any potential legal challenges, obviously probably from Gelman would be the main source. So those are things that could slow it down. And then once it's listed, it will be, I don't want to say it lengthy, but there will be a transition process. It might take a year or two after that. So it could be, 2027 before everything is fully in their hands. But unfortunately, we just don't have a ton of clarity on how that timeline is going to work out right now. But, when we do know stuff, we'll keep you guys apprised of that situation.
Okay, thanks so much.
You're very welcome. So that's what I know about the NPL proposal. Just on the rest of these topics here, we don't have any new draft monitoring plans. We're actually in the process of approving the Eastern Area Monitoring Plan. So we've gotten over all the hurdles that we needed to for that. And we're about to get that one in place. Once again, we appreciate the comments from the CARD group on that. And, those were instrumental in making sure that we did a thorough assessment of that monitoring plan. We did also very recently, within the last couple weeks, approve the financial assurance mechanism with Gelman. That is going to be effective as soon as we get their letter of credit. And they had 30 days from our acceptance of that to produce that letter. So that should be forthcoming soon. I think that was a pretty successful negotiation there. We secured an additional about $5 million in financial assurance from Gelman. We asked them to supply a 10% contingency over the price of the financial assurance mechanism that they'd originally submitted. We thought that was necessary. We don't think Gelman's going anywhere, but we wanted to make sure that any unforeseen remedial costs, if that financial assurance mechanism kicks in, were covered. So that was why we asked for that contingency. And we're really happy with the fact that we were able to get that. So that should be, in place very soon as we get their letter. Now, so items C and E, I can't comment a whole lot on exactly what the Water Resources Division is doing. Last month, they provided me a comment saying that they were working on getting the NPDES permit squared away, and then they're going to turn their attention to the MS4 violation. So I can't really say a lot about their program. For example, the question down there, will there be a public hearing? I unfortunately don't know the answer to that. That would be a question for, I believe, Jessica Stiles, as she's the one that is working on that permit renewal. And I will certainly check in with her, but I don't want to say yes or no. Rita, go ahead.
Thanks. So one question I had and one concern I had is that if I understand the NPDES permit correctly, that Gelman is using dilution of higher concentrated extracted water as a way of meeting the fourth amended consent judgment. Is that correct? I mean, is dilution allowed?
That is a question that I'm not really familiar with all the data surrounding it or the language of the permit. So unfortunately, I can't really accurately answer that right now. That's, sort of a water resources issue.
But it should be your division's issue too, I would think, because, I mean, they're saying they're using less contaminated water to bring the concentration down so their treatment facility can handle it instead of having to upgrade the treatment facility. But who's to say what water they're using? I mean, they're basically just meeting the standard by diluting the polluted water and then putting that out into the surface water. It sounds like it should be in your crossing over into your area as well.
I mean, I can certainly look into it, but I just don't have the information right now to, give a complete answer. So I don't want to, overpromise anything. But like I said, I'm not super familiar with the terms of that NPDES permit. So, but I can definitely see where you're coming from on that. So we can try to get some clarity on that. But I can't say, whether they're outside of, the permit right now, or if that's a problem, whether they're diluting it or not.
Yeah, I would appreciate it because it's not a question of whether they're outside the permit, but they're claiming that to meet the permit, they are diluting the contaminated water.
Okay.
And it just strikes me as wrong. Thank you.
Certainly. Give me one moment here. I'm just writing notes for myself.
Chris, Kathy has her hand up too.
I did see that. Yep. I just want to
Okay.
make sure that I get, Rita's question written down so that I can make sure to follow up on it. Okay, go ahead, Kathy.
Okay, I have a question. You commented that the Eagle has approved the financial assurance plan from Gelman, and you're going to be getting an additional $5 million from them. How will this money potentially be used, and what interval is this earmarked for? I mean, does this cover the interval before the EPA officially takes jurisdiction of the Gelman site?
Yes, Kathy. So great. That's a great question. And thank you for letting me add some clarification. So the financial assurance mechanism is basically to say, if for some reason, and there are several reasons why this could happen, that Gelman decides that they want to abandon the remediation system, right? The financial assurance mechanism basically says, if that were to happen, if they become insolvent, they just walk away, then there would be this $55 million financial assurance that would be paid to Eagle so that we could continue the remedial activities, so that basically we could continue to operate the treatment system and sample the monitoring wells and all the stuff that basically Gelman is currently doing. So that's what that financial assurance mechanism. So basically, instead of, if there were something that triggered the financial assurance mechanism, instead of $50 million, we would have $55 million or somewhere in that ballpark, right? The numbers I just gave are, rough, but so that's the idea, is that, if something goes wrong, Eagle has more money to continue the remedial activities after that were to happen. So it's not like Gelman is actually paying us that amount to do anything. It's just basically saying, if they fold up or if something goes completely awry, then they would pay that out. And that I think I'm trying to recall, it's either 3 or 5 years is the interval on which we get new financial assurance mechanisms. So the current one should last us around until the EPA would take over. And if, the EPA transition is still ongoing, when the next one is due, we would negotiate the next one.
Okay, so it can't be used for routine well testing?
No, I'm sorry. Yeah, like I said, it's not money that's being paid directly to us unless Gelman basically walks away or dissolves.
Okay.
And that's my understanding. I'm not a lawyer. I hope I didn't just, have Brian pulling his hair out on the other end because I said something wrong. But yeah, that's the way I understand it. Did that answer your question entirely?
Yes.
Great.
Thank you.
No, you're welcome. Thank you. So yeah, and Beth, I saw your comment about the Water Resources Division. I would like to get somebody here for them, from them, so that I'm not speaking for them, but we haven't made that happen yet. But I certainly will touch base at least about the issue that Rita raised about using the dilution there. So we can definitely get some clarity on that. And then the last item for Eagle updates is item D, a GSI work plan for the Allen Creek drain. I think in my last update, I'd mentioned that when I met with Gelman in November, they sort of wanted to go in a slightly different direction. So we have met, we don't have a new work plan yet, but I did meet with them and express our concerns that, there is dioxane in the pipe. We'd like to make sure that, that is not exceeding our GSI interval or our GSI criterion there, and that it won't. And then I also expressed to them that, we need to look at the, I guess, the geologic material outside of the drain itself. The drain is one issue, but the sort of area around the drain is also a potential preferential pathway that we need to look into. So, we're getting somewhere with them, and we're sort of expanding the scope of what we'd like them to look at during that investigation. Yeah, Vince, go ahead.
Yeah, so I just want to remind you and others that the Alums Creek Watershed Group and CARD Group has had real concerns about contamination in the groundwater seeping into people's homes. We have a published article, peer-reviewed. Bob Bailey and Rita LaCaruso both were involved in that. And I think there is a real concern that we could potentially have homeowners on the west side of the city having issues with their basement exposure. So we have a lot of groundwater near the surface. We have a lot of wet basements. It's very common. You know, we have like Fountain Street, Bath Street, you know, Water Hill. You know, they're all called those things for a reason because there's a lot of seeps and such. And so even in a drought, I'm glad that Eagle was able to do testing during a very dry period. But even during a dry period, there's a very large amount of groundwater, in my opinion, groundwater flowing in that pipe or in the pipes through West Park. And I think we need to make sure that we don't get down the road where we find basements being exposed. And I think, unfortunately, the city of Ann Arbor did not do very efficient testing, I don't think. They're way upstream. They didn't come to CARD, they didn't come to the Alums Creek Group, so they didn't want to know what we would suggest for whatever reason. I think that was a major mistake on their part, and I really am disappointed in that. But I think we do need to look farther eastward than where the city was looking. And I'm not sure why they were so far west, because the hill falls away as it gets to West Park. And I think there and beyond towards the east are the more effective means of testing to protect homeowners' exposure. So I think it's a serious issue for Ann Arbor. I know Eagle is concerned about it, and hopefully EPA will take up that issue when they take over. But I hate to see more money spent that was not effectively used. And I think we need to make sure that Eagle and EPA communicate with CARD and the Alums Creek Watershed Group about what we think would be effective tests, and discuss it at least, and maybe come to an agreement. So up to now, I'm not too thrilled with what we've got from our city, and I hope we can change that. Thank you.
Certainly. Thanks, Vince. And, I'm not going to comment about anything that Ann Arbor did. I will say we are going to keep going with our annual surface water monitoring. We're going to make sure we're keeping an eye on concentrations down there. And, in addition to that, with this GSI and Allen Creek work plan, we do want to get Gelman involved in some of that activity, and getting a clearer picture of what's going on down gradient, getting a clearer picture of what's going on in the area of the drain. And we're working towards that end by going through these discussions on that monitoring plan or that work plan. So.
All right, thanks.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for me right now?
Chris, I have a question. I'm sorry.
Jack, go ahead.
If it would take a change in state regulation to address our concerns about the groundwater and wet basements in the Old West Side, who would initiate the rule changes? Would it be Eagle, or does that have to come through the legislature, or how does that work?
That's a question I'm not 100% certain on. My gut reaction is that it has to come from the legislature, but I don't want to say an incorrect thing. But yeah, I mean, I do think that it has to be a legislature thing. I'm gonna write down a note and follow up on that and get some clarity on that as well. So
thank you very much.
Yep, thank you.
Any other questions or comments under the Eagle updates portion of this agenda? Seeing none, I'm going to move on to old business, Washtenaw County.
I don't see even any staff here from the county today, so.
Well, that's easy enough then.
Hey, Jack, so
Oh.
Carissa is one of our staff. It's Kristen talking.
Hi, Kristen. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay,
So Jenny and I are both in, but Chris is the one that logged in.
okay, I'll mark you for attendance. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I was gonna send you a quick email or put something in the chat. But I don't have an intervener update other than to say that, you know, the process continues like all legal processes, slowly but surely plodding on. And then in terms of the well sampling update, you know, we are continuing to support residential well sampling. It'll probably occur in early June. And we'll be sampling all of the homes that tested positive that we had detections on in our last round, and then going out, I think, 1,000 feet. So it'll primarily be the same folks who got sampled last time, maybe a few new folks. I don't have specific numbers for you today, but yeah, in that area that Roger's circling. Any questions for us?
I see no hands, so I will move along then.
Okay, thank you.
Ann Arbor Township. Mike, you're mute.
Yeah, I know I couldn't unmute myself. I'm pounding away on the keyboard. Anyway, on the question of the well testing, Ann Arbor Township was really busy this last month with a number of other issues, and our agenda was long. We had to move a number of issues, including the drinking water well testing, to the March meeting, where we'll bring it up, and I expect full support for that.
Excellent. Thank you. Any other issues out in your neck of the woods?
That's why we're so busy. But they're all from closed sessions, so I am not in a position to discuss them.
I completely understand. I see no hands up or any interesting comments or questions. So I'm going to move on to Kathy with Scioto Township. But first, I'm going to note that if you downloaded the agenda before this morning, you missed the addition of the Scioto resolution, but she'll discuss that in full. Go ahead, Kathy.
Okay, so first, number one is an update on the Knights of Columbus development proposal. And our expert, Larry Lemke, is still reviewing the study that was conducted by the developer's hydrogeology consultant. So I don't have anything more to report on that issue.
So I have a question.
Okay.
Where in the process is it? Is it still in the Planning Commission?
No. It has already gone through Planning Commission review, and they've recommended denial for several reasons unrelated to the hydrogeology issues.
Thank you.
Okay, so as everyone knows, Scioto Township sent our resolution to EGLE regarding our request for EGLE to implement a well testing program and establishment of this program using method 522. We received a response from EGLE yesterday, and you can read all of this. I forwarded the response to Jack and Roger last night. EGLE's they're saying that they are already operating a program in conjunction with Washtenaw County, similar to the program being requested by Scioto, and that the 4th CJ already requires Gelman to conduct residential drinking water sampling and to provide alternative water if certain provisions in the 4th CJ are triggered. So they are refusing to do this, in summary. I've covered this very quickly. You can read the letter You can read SIO's resolution. SIO's resolution was used the CARD resolution as a guide, although we made a few changes. And I guess I'm not surprised, but I want to hear comments from other people. Dan Bicknell has weighed in, stating that EGLE is actually required to cover this under a certain provision of an earlier judgment. And I was unaware of that, and I don't know anything more about that. So I'm just hearing about that for the first time this morning. Right. I don't know, Jack, do you know anything more about that?
I received the same email that you did from Dan, and I've taken a look at the 2014 agreement. I don't think it bars EGLE from seeking contribution from Gelman, but I haven't looked at it that deeply. I think that well, I'm just disappointed, you know. So I'm going to have to look at this more. I would like to follow up with EGLE about their claim that the 2014 agreement prevents them from asking for recovery of costs.
Well, we have Brian Nagel here who can respond to your questions.
Was that a question?
Yeah, I want to direct it at Brian.
Brian, are you willing to speak on this subject?
A little bit. I'll let you know too, this is, you know, my last week of employment by the state. I'm retiring at the end of the week. But, you know, looking at the issue is basically, it comes down to, you know, the resolution that the CARD team put together stops at a point in, you know, looking at the consent judgment, and it stops right before the reservations of rights. And, you know, there are reservation of rights that also, you know, that Gelman has in there. And, you know, they apply to, you know, conditions that are newly discovered / previously unknown, or EGLE adopts more restrictive criteria. And the new conditions show that the remedial action is not protective. The not protective part is, you know, that ties us back to our cleanup criteria. 7.2 is the drinking water criterion. And, you know, the detections that are, you know, sub 3 parts per billion and, you know, whatever, just, you know, really don't fit into, you know, the consent judgment. And, you know, where Gelman has to react to that. I'll note too that there are 2 provisions in 2 sections or whatever in the consent judgment that is, you know, ties Gelman to, if certain conditions are met, to provide bottled water if 3.0 parts per billion is exceeded. But, you know, it's a rather drawn out, you know, decision tree, essentially, depending on where it is, where the 3.0 is, whether it's the, you know, eastern area or the western area. So, yeah, that's basically the quick response.
So I understand that the drinking water standard applies to their requirements to take remedial actions, but how will we know that those levels are being exceeded if they're unwilling to pay for the tests that will monitor where the dioxin is flowing and the concentrations of the dioxin where it ends up? I mean, everything north of 14 is previously unrecognized by Gelman. I think they have never wanted to put monitoring wells up there because they didn't want to know whether there was any dioxin up there. And now that the county and the townships are discovering dioxin, admittedly in small concentrations, it should cause us alarm. And motivate us to want to know where the dioxin is in that northern direction. So it seems to me that the 2014 agreement allows Eagle to seek this kind of monitoring and cost recovery. But I will admit that I didn't negotiate it and I haven't taken a close look at it. So is there any likelihood that Eagle is, or that the state is going to follow up and try to get better monitoring activity out of the polluter?
I don't know the answer to that question. But, I would point out too, is, you just talked about, Washtenaw County and Eagle sampling. And that's, kind of the, part of the reason we're doing it is to, like basically see where the low detections are.
So it's just going to continue to be local governmental entities that have to cover the costs of monitoring the spread of Gelman's pollution. Go ahead, Roger. Roger, you're mute.
We're back to using homeowner wells to find Gelman's dioxin, and the taxpayers or the homeowners are paying for that. And the extent of the contamination, as you can see from what I brought up here on my Google Earth mashup, shows that the contamination from Gelman has gone as far north as it has east, and a little farther than it has gone west even. And we have an eastern portion of the cleanup, and we have a western portion of the cleanup, but we don't have a northern portion of the cleanup where people are actually have wells that have been contaminated. And some of them close to what the value was in 94, 95 at Evergreen. When it got to 2 parts per billion, those people were provided access to city water, when the cleanup standard was 3 parts per billion. And over the years, through Gelman's actions and others, the cleanup standards were loosened and loosened again, and they didn't get tightened quick enough to be in this 2014 settlement. The 2014 settlement was when the cleanup standard was still 85 parts per billion. And it's gotten tightened partially to match EPA's 2010 guidelines for dioxin, which is 3.5 for 1 in 100,000 cancer risk over a 7-year lifetime, or 0.35 for 1 in a million cancer risk over a 7-year lifetime, which most states use the 1 in a million. Michigan uses 1 in 100,000, but over a 32-year lifetime, because what contamination can possibly last longer than 32 years, right? So it gets back to who set the standards? The legislature. Who influenced the legislature? Well, you know who influenced the legislature. We have, we have some of the money flow and some of the calls and some of the backroom deals. So that has to be corrected. Now, the question is, did the 2014 lock and the consent judgment lock everything into those old standards, those old loose standards that don't really protect people's wells? So that's where we're at. By the way, as you all have seen, if you haven't seen it already, I shared the 2014 agreement and some additional materials to CARD-Core email group about 15 minutes before this meeting started. So you'll have some reading there, and I'd encourage all the legal minds to weigh in on how how good that 2014 agreement is. You know, my wife and I just started watching Suits. We didn't watch it when it first came out, so we're watching it now. And you know, there's some items in this agreement that would make for an episode of Suits, if anybody knows what that series is. So I'll leave it at that. And I think Mike might add his hand up if he wants to weigh in.
I was just going to say, I did not read yesterday Eagle's response, nor did I read Dan's email, so I haven't seen them. I'll take a look at those, and it may be that our resolution that gets presented to Ann Arbor Township it was going to be very similar to the one that both CARD and Scioto Township have submitted, but maybe we'll reflect on those because we may not be in the same position as Scioto Township is. And if so, we'll include that in our response, in our resolution.
Your resolution may want to have a whereas clause that notes the 2014 agreements potential to seek those extra costs. You know, take a look at that agreement.
I will.
Thanks so much, Mike.
Before we go on, I wanted to ask Brian, congratulations on retiring. I hope your back is better. I hope that this not having to attend these meetings helps your back. I just went through the back issue myself this last month. I want to make sure that whoever takes over for you is fully up to speed on this. And what assurance can you give us that, like, if you know you're retiring, do you already know who your replacement is going to be, and are they on this call?
She is not on this call, but she's my supervisor, Danielle Allison Yoakum, and she's been, you know, involved in, you know, sort of the background of the back scenes of, you know, this site for quite some time, you know, that I've been involved, at least the last 4 or 5 years, kind of a time frame. But, you know, it's I don't imagine she'll meet the standard that you're looking for. It takes a couple of years to come up to speed here.
No kidding.
You know, but I'm fully confident that she knows what's going on here.
Does Eagle and AG have a complete list of all the court cases and all the documentation for those court cases?
Of course.
Is that public?
It's, you know, not published publicly. You know, it's you know, it's in all the court filings. You know, it's within the filing, our file cabinets, paper.
Really? Paper?
Yeah, really, paper. Or scans of paper sometimes.
Yeah, and does any of that paper include the secret sampling that was done during the secret negotiations 2016 and 17 during the negotiations for the fourth consent judgment? Is now approved, and that was supposed to be released once the approval was done.
I imagine there is sampling that I honestly don't know if we have all the sampling results. And they were done by not Gelman's direct law firm, but I think at the behest of another law firm. And I don't know, honestly.
Because I think what we have in here with this, the problem with the Gelman being able to meet the standards that we found out in these latest filings, that when they started pumping from TW24, they found really high concentrations that threw off not just the dioxane discharge limit, but the bromate discharge limits. So it's like Gelman did not know what the problem was that they were trying to solve with their homegrown ozone oxidation system that's proved to be too small for the problem. Just like the Evergreen system that was working quite well up to 500 parts per billion, treat non-detect, using UV oxidation, proved to be too small because they didn't know how much dioxin was making its way to Evergreen. We have the same thing at the core. Now, why is that? They drilled the TW17 back in 2017 or something like that, maybe earlier. The well log doesn't show any sampling during the drilling that was supposed to be happening every 10 feet. And it was not drilled to bedrock, which was the practice around that time. So they deliberately avoided defining the problem and sharing the problem early enough to come up with a solution. Instead of having a in the permit that's up for review, instead of having a 20 part per billion loose daily maximum discharge, the EGLE was set to make it 9 parts per billion. But because of these problems, not knowing how much dioxin, how much bromate was going to be created by what they're pumping from the core, their system wasn't able to handle it. So rather than upgrading the system, they just, as Kathy said, and Rita said, they just loosened where they were pumping from and adjusted their pump and treat to match the standards instead of having the solution match what the problem really was. So those are the kind of things we have to deal with in the coming months with your replacement and all the other changes that are going on. So I just want people to know about that. I'll cover a little bit of that in my update here later. So thanks, Brian. Thanks for your effort on this, and good luck in retirement.
I honestly hate to say this, but I'm actually going to miss this a little bit.
No, you can wait a minute. Are you a resident of Michigan?
It's
You're
the
still going to be a
Stockholm
resident.
syndrome.
You're not moving to Florida or anything, are you? I mean, aren't you going to be? You can still come to these meetings.
Yeah, volunteer. What the heck?
We'll see.
I private messaged him congratulations, and I almost said, let me get your private email and take off your michigan.gov one, but later.
And I'll remind you that you wouldn't be there's been a cases of DNR and DEQ people retiring, and just before they retired, they made a right decision on their way out. So think about that.
So Brian, I'd like to convey my congratulations as well, and let Ms. Yoakum know that if she'd like to meet with a group of CARD board members, we can try to bring her up to speed if she has any questions at all.
Yeah, will do.
Thank you so much.
Jack, I just want to comment. I talked to Danielle at our last large meeting hosted by Debbie Dingell, and she is very well versed on the Gelman issues. We talked for quite a while.
All right.
I'm encouraged.
Excellent. And I think that's the end of the discussion from Scioto Township, unless you have other issues.
No, nothing else. Thank you.
So you can escape this meeting at your convenience. We have a representative from the city of Ann Arbor today. I didn't see Patty.
This is Erin Donnelly. I don't have any updates today.
I'm sorry, Erin. I didn't know that you were here.
No problem.
All righty. So then let's move on to the executive board. Rita, do you have anything to say about the Yale Superfund research project?
Okay. I have been in contact with Bacillus We are going to revise the letter that we wrote. Evidently, he wants some very specific things in it, and so we're working on that. And when I have a draft between him and me, then I'll share it with the board, and we'll see what the board thinks. There's no new information in it from the last letter. It's just, except that he wants a background, then we have to have a resolution, but I don't understand what the resolution is, so they're going to clarify that. But if I have any questions, I'll bring it to the board. But right now, it sounds like it's just a matter of spinning what we already wrote in a slightly different way. And he wants to submit what's called a response to action grant to do an exposure assessment study in Washington County and to do a historical exposure health study. So I don't know anything more than that.
Yep.
I haven't seen any details. It's just a conversation at this point. And that's it. And I did want to say one thing to Aaron. I couldn't find my reactions for putting my hand up fast enough. But Aaron, who I don't know if you had a hand in writing the letter to EGLE about the NPDES permit, draft permit. But I thought it was very well done, and I was really just so pleased to see it. It was very helpful because I'm not an expert, and I was like really struggling with some of the acronyms and the equations. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. And then I read that letter, and I said, okay, I understand it now.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Seeing no hands up. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Beth.
I wanted to say thank you too to the county's letter and the cities, and all the ones I read were real strong and points that I hadn't even thought of that were great. So thank you, everybody.
Excellent. All right. James, do you want to update us on polluter pays if there's any new developments?
I don't have any new information at the time. I suspect there's been a little action in the legislature, at least as far as formal regarding the bill. So stay tuned.
All righty. Thank you so much. Do any other executive board members have any items they want to raise at this time? Seeing none, I'm going to turn it over to the chair for his update. Roger, you're mute.
You'd think I learned by now to unmute before I start talking. So I'm still waiting for EGLE's Gelman database with data through 2023. So I can update the Google Earth mashups and Tableau public visualizations. And I've offered to help with that update if that would help make it happen faster. Chris, do you have any idea when that might happen?
Hi, Roger. Yeah, I haven't had a chance to go back. So we've updated the database with all of the Gelman data through the end of 2023. And I was trying to make my way to our website because I thought we had posted that. Still working on getting the residential well data in there for 2023. That's a little bit heavier of a lift. But we have a couple ways that we're thinking about going about that. But that said, one of our main concerns with getting the database updated through the end of 2023 is to make sure that our Rockworks model is complete and that we can get new visualizations into our web app. So that was why we focused on getting the Gelman data in there first, because all of the detections out in SIO and Ann Arbor townships, those wouldn't even register on our model. It cuts off, I believe, at 4 parts per billion. So like I said, we've got it updated to the end of 2023 with Gelman's data. I thought it went on the website, but that's one of the things I'm going to be following up on today is just making sure that that is out there and with, you know, at least the most up-to-date data that we do have.
Yeah, well, thanks. And as I mentioned to you before, that all you really need to do is put the township sampling in a format that's similar to what Gelman provides you in their so-called DEQ formatted.
That is true to some extent. There's also, I think, I'm not going to go
add the wells. You've got to add the new
It's
wells.
adding the wells so that,
Right,
you know,
right.
in the relational database, the data that you put in has something to reference it to. That is sort of one of the trickier parts. So I have not forgotten about your offer for assistance, and you know that might be something I call in. But we're trying to get it worked out over here, you know, as a first pass. Give it the old college try.
Yeah, well, thanks for the update.
No problem. Thank you.
Yeah, and of course I'm hampered a little bit because I lost my C drive on this computer a while back. And this was after unrelated to a power surge that took out some of my home appliances, my printer, and a few other things in the house. And $2,500 later, I'm still almost fixed from that. So yeah, whole house surge protectors might be a good idea for people. We talked about this earlier, but here's some comments on the NPDES renewal permit. And I have all the different stakeholder comments, as well as all the permit docs in this Google Drive file, so you can look at it in the order that they were listed in the report, in the documentation for that. And then I added dates and put it in date order, so you can kind of go through this in date order. Then I've added comments and some notes. I've also added a list of the stakeholder comments to that NPDES permit in this same Google Drive spreadsheet under stakeholder comments, and then tried to summarize them in this concerns list. It's hard to summarize because as pointed out before, the stakeholders had some really good comments and they were very detailed. So summarizing takes away some of that detail. So I encourage people to go in and read each of these to understand what the concerns were with the permit. And assuming we do have a public meeting, which was basically promised over the years, that people want to come in and maybe add some of their own comments during that public hearing that should be coming up. Let's see, get back to my thing here. As I mentioned earlier about the EGLE wanted to tighten up the standards on that permit from the daily maximum of 20 parts per billion in discharge to 9 parts per billion, which Gelman should be able to match, because, you know, that's what their experience showed. But what they encountered at TW24 seemingly was a surprise to them, that they didn't really understand how much dioxin there still was at the core. And I might pull this back up here. TW24 is right about this area here. And it was, you know, over 2,000 parts per billion at times. And it's outside where Gelman's map showed 1,000 parts per billion. So again, how do you solve a problem if you haven't properly defined it? And you were stumbling again because there hasn't been due diligence by Gelman and sometimes by regulators to match the scale of the problem. We're still dealing with ongoing dioxin spreading out from the core and more than 2.5 miles away in different directions without knowing how much dioxin is completely left. Gelman did estimate how much they thought was in the groundwater a couple times, and they'd blown past that by removing more dioxin than they said was down there. We haven't had an update on that for about 20 years. We don't know how much dioxin is still down there. We do know it's more than they think it is because they keep having these problems with undersized systems to try to solve the problem. And Eagle, rather than making Gelman upgrade their treatment systems, reverted back to the old 20 parts per billion daily maximum. I mean, that's a small thing. The monthly average is still 7. It's still 7. But again, that 7 was set back when the cleanup standard was 85 parts per billion. Now the Michigan's cleanup standard is 7.2, which is partially adhering to EPA's 2010 guidelines. That's not good enough. We're not keeping up with other states that value their water more than Michigan does. And so again, it's back to the due diligence. By the way, the TW4 issue was foretold. I posted something back in 2021 about TW24 before we knew all what we know today. And this is a link here in my comments too, so people can read this at their leisure and weigh in and look through these images. So TW24 again is outside the area that Gelman said was even 85 parts per billion. And it's about 2,000 parts per billion when they finally got around to drilling and seeing what was there. The well log first shared in 2021 was the well was installed in 2017, but it wasn't shared until 2021. Again, this is part of what Gelman was able to withhold from the public during negotiations for the fourth consent judgment. And we don't know what else was withheld. When I was asking Brian just now about, what else might be there that we should know about. And it's disappointing to find out it's in paper copies because, of course, it wasn't just paper copies. Nobody types anything on a typewriter anymore. It's electronic in somebody's format. And even if it isn't, we have tools now that can take paper copies and get all the data, all the text from it, all the information from it. Just because it's paper copies doesn't mean it might take longer to scan it, but we have ways to do this, and we need to get it done. We need to know what the problems were in order to help solve it. And the public is even more in the dark in some ways than it was 10, 20 years ago. We have to fix that. And yada, yada, yada. So there's some other comments here back when I made this back in 2021. This was kind of interesting. Was there something else in the influence stream from TW24 that interfered with the treatment? And we just found out through one of the responses recently from the permit documents that yes, apparently there's more bromide, naturally occurring bromide in the water around TW24 that caused more bromate to be created by Gelman's less effective ozone oxidation system And it's the ozone limit that they had to deal with. The new carcinogen ozone that they're discharging along with dioxin. So again, it's back to not knowing what the problem was and not upgrading the treatment systems to take care of it. Anyway, let me go back to my update.
Roger, can I ask a question? Since it did come up tonight about the secret paperwork and stuff, the EPA gets all of that, don't they? From
No,
they'll never.
Well,
Like
I don't know. It wasn't in any of the EPA's review documents because, again, some of that they couldn't even get the data that EGLE had during the negotiations, and it's not clear whether they will get that. The EPA basically works through consultants, and if you look through the 2 consultant reports that were done during the preliminary investigation back in 2016-17, and the recent one, the SI one done by a different consultant, there's a lot of overlapping documents, but there's a lot of documents that we have as CARD and SRSW that I'm not sure EPA has. And certainly, we could do a better job of indexing all that, but we have to have access to it. We have to have all the stakeholders working together on this. It's going to take a village to solve this problem, and there's some people missing from this, stakeholders missing from this meeting right now, who maybe not even going to watch the video of this and read the recap of it. The only reason this problem is anywhere near being solved is because citizens got involved. Concerned people got involved. It was discovered by a U of M graduate student who's now back involved with Bicknell. I only got involved because my neighbor talked me into going to a meeting, and having worked with local governments and technology, and I could see that this is a problem that can be solved. We just have to define the problem, and we're still defining the problem really decades later. This is the nation's largest 1,4-dioxane contamination problem of its type in the country, and we still don't know the extent of the problem. We know it's big, and it's getting bigger, and it's going to last throughout all of our lifetimes and our kids' lifetimes and maybe our grandkids' lifetimes. But we're not treating it like that. We can't, we have to have the wherewithal to take care of this over generations. And it's going to be difficult. I don't want to have it all fall back on taxpayers. This is Gelman's problem. Anyway, I'm stalling a little bit here because I'm coming up on 2 minutes. I don't know if the JAGS team is on here.
We are here.
Okay,
Yes.
I want to introduce Jennifer Lee. Is that how you pronounce
Yes,
the last
you
name?
got it.
And this is a student, the graduate student group from U of M School of Information, interested in learning about general experiences residents have with their private wells. And it's a master's project, and there's a bunch of you on this project, only a few which will be on the screen probably. Gabrielle and Jennifer, I know, are here, and they would like to interview residents who have wells. But I'll let them talk about their project for a few minutes, and then I'll wrap up my my chair update. So.
Yep. Thank you, Roger, and hi, CARD-EGLE, SRSW, and members. Thank you all so much for having us today. I'm Jennifer, and I'm joined by Gabby. Not sure if you wanted to quickly say hi on audio or visual, Gabby, so folks can hear you.
I'll just say hi.
Yep.
I'm Gabby. Yeah, I am, like Jennifer, a student at the School of Information at the University of Michigan, and Jennifer is going to do a great job kind of explaining a little bit more about what our project is.
Yeah, so we are Team JAGS, and we are a group of second-year master's students at U of M in the School of Information, or UMSI, and we're studying information science and user experience, which refers to how people feel and interact with a product or service, such as homeowners' experiences with well maintenance, like what supplies do they need, how much does this cost, and who can help them, or knowing how to check for levels or updates on dioxin in their area and legislatives that impact them. So we're in our master's capstone course right now, which is SI 699, and our team is interested in learning more about these experiences and what types of issues, such as the issues on the call, that members and residents have with specifically private well water in a 45-minute virtual interview this or early next week. I'm just going to repeat that. Once again, we're interested in learning more about these types of challenges with members and residents, specifically with private well water in a 45-minute virtual interview this or early next week. We will make sure to anonymize all insights we get so we don't share any identifying information for those who are interested in sharing their experiences with us. And if you're interested or have questions, I'll leave our team email and details in the chat so folks have that info. Did I miss anything, Gabby, or is there anything you would like to add?
No, I think that's it. Yeah, we're just really excited to sort of learn about people's experiences using private wells and learn more about the concerns that you have, such as dioxin, and also sort of what are the day-to-day ways in which you sort of like manage those concerns, or when do these concerns show up? Maybe they're not day-to-day at all, but like, yeah, just wanting to learn your experiences.
Yep. And I hope this goes without saying, but thank you all so much for the work that you do. You know, some of us have been on call since 10 a.m. and have heard some of the frustrating topics being discussed. So I just wanted to take a moment to celebrate everyone for making it to this call and having this discussion. So residents and students like Gabby and I on the call have clean and safe access to water. And we look forward to learning more in our interviews. So thank you.
Good. Any comments from the participants?
Yeah, I just want to make a comment that Yale University is working with a member or members of the CARD group, and they're very concerned about 1,4-dioxane exposures, and they're going to be trying to look at health effects, hopefully collect data. They're still in the early stages of that. So they have EPA grant, Superfund grant to work on this. So they have the support of EPA, and I think it's a very serious concern they have about 1,4-dioxane generally, and especially in this area with the high exposures we potentially have gotten in the past, and less so now, but still worrisome. So just to let you know that there's others involved in this then who are very concerned and putting effort to try and help out the community. So thanks for working on this. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Vince. And did you say Yale? Was that correct?
Yeah, Yale University.
Got it.
And they have an NIEHS grant, not an EPA grant.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, Rita's working with Vasilis, who's at Yale University.
He's the director of the center, and he's the chair of their Department of Environmental Health Sciences. I don't know the exact name of the department, something like that.
Got it. Thank you, Rita and Vince.
Yeah, and I've been in contact with the School of Information from time to time when they have semester projects pitched, and I've pitched some of them. And one of them that I'm hoping that gets picked up is I want to see a list of all the U of M projects that were done over the decades about this issue. And I've shared one of the first ones that was done back in 1988 by the School of Natural Resources at the time. The student team reviewed the Gelman issue in 1988 when everything was still pretty fresh. 180 some page report, I think, right? Did you guys read that, Jennifer? It was long. And there were a lot of details in there that were very interesting that you wouldn't have gotten any other way. And there's been other student projects over the decades, and I have some of them. There's one that got lost because it was only a paper copy. You know, we didn't scan it back in those days, and got passed around the neighborhood. I never got it back. It was talked about citizen involvement. And I'd sure like to have that back if anybody happens to know where it is. So the whole community can weigh in on this and have the contributions. And we had good input from former Gelman employees like Jim Schultz is on the screen, and Diane is no longer around, at least not on our meetings. You know, to get those stories documented, to help everybody understand the complete history of this and not lose some key inflection points that happened over the decades. What we learned from this site can be applied to so many other sites that are similar. How do you respond? How you can define the problem more quickly and get solutions in place and avoid having it tied up in court. You know, we weren't very good at that. And we could maybe learn from other sites, you know, how do you do this better? But it's going to take all the stakeholders working together. So I'm going to wrap up unless there's any other comments, questions for me, and let Jack take the rest of the meeting.
Well, thank you. On the agenda I'm looking at, it says that you were going to introduce the freelance journalist, but that happened last month, didn't it?
I just added that, but I don't think she's with us. Eleanor, are you here?
No, she's. I'm going to be meeting with her this afternoon. She's, I think, in class or something. She'll be watching the video of this.
Already then.
She's a freelance journalist. I'm going to be feeding her the few thousand articles that I've accumulated on this over the years, and we're going to be talking about how we can gather information from those and keep any decision makers and stakeholders up to date going forward in a way that, you know, doesn't overwhelm them. That, you know, we have ways of searching what we have, and we can start with the articles that have been written about this site over the years as a basis. I would include the student projects in that once those are all available. So,
all right,
everybody's input.
So then moving along, are there any non-agenda items that anyone wanted to raise before we conclude this meeting? Our next meeting is April 2nd at 6 p.m. Oh, go ahead, Rita.
So there's a drinking water conference coming up. I'm trying to see if I managed to not erase it. I think I did. Anyway, I should have put it in the chat. But there's a drinking water conference coming up celebrating the 50th anniversary of the Safe Drinking Water Act.
Yeah, put it in the chat.
Yeah, and they are welcoming, you know, presentations or abstracts, submitted abstracts from community groups. I don't know if I've got enough interest on my own to do it, but it might be of interest to some people.
We have a pretty big group of interested parties here, so if you just send it out to the whole CARD group.
Oh, wait a minute, I do have it. Yeah, I do have it. Okay, so yeah, okay. It's going to be September 25th to 26th, and the abstract deadline is, I think, coming up March 8th. So anyway, yeah, I'll put it in. I'll put it in right now, and I think. All right, sorry, I'm done.
All righty. Anything else?
If you want to get the chat, you have to get it before we shut down because
I'm trying.
it will go away. just for
I-
people to know that, but, you know.
Well, if
Well-
anybody misses a chat, just contact me. I have, I automatically get copies of all the chats as host of this Zoom session. So,
Well, I'm going to repeat my suggestion that she send an email to the CARD Corps announcing this. And that will reach people that are not here today as well.
that's a good idea. Yeah.
Thank you, Rita.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, Beth. What's the temperature down there, Beth?
Mid-70s.
Oh, God.
Hey, it
Since
was mid-70s here, yesterday, I
you
think.
guys have had warm weather, yeah.
It's getting cold again, yeah.
Well,
Go Vogue. Go
winter's
Vogue.
been over here since probably early February. It's really just December and January or winter
Yeah.
here, which
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
long
Well,
spring though and a long fall and
enjoy it. You deserve
well,
it.
I heard you guys enjoyed the nice early spring there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That we are.
Yeah.
All right. Good seeing
Good.
everybody. Thank you.
Yep, good
Bye.
to see
Hi,
everybody.
Kathy
I'll see ya.
Griswold. What was I going to tell you?
Hi, Beth.
Oh, good to see you. And Ann Bannister's face, I see. And Rita, my old city.